Welcome back everyone to Formula 1 2021 and welcome to your first qualifying report for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Formula 1 is back and my goodness, what a session we were treated to today. Stories up and down the grid. So before we get into the results, spoiler warning, for today's qualifying session, I would very much recommend watching the session and then coming back over here for your qualifying report. If you are new, feel free to subscribe, but without further ado, let's jump into your results for the 2021 Bahrain Grand Prix qualifying session. And despite scoring one pole position throughout 2020, Max Verstappen started things where he left off, claiming the first pole position of the 2021 season. Red Bull are here. It's not a joke. Alarm bells will be ringing up and down the world of Formula 1 because the fight this season is well and truly on. 4/10 clear. 4/10 clear of the Mercedes. Can you tell I'm a little bit excited after today's session? But a mega drive from Max Verstappen gave him pole. But the two Mercedes were there or thereabouts. Second for Lewis Hamilton, again 4/10 away from Verstappen's best time. Valtteri Bottas a couple of tenths behind in P3. But what I do think is perhaps more alarming for Mercedes isn't the pace of Red Bull. We were all expecting they were going to be quick this season. But it's the man in P4, Charles Leclerc, only 1/10 of a second behind Valtteri Bottas, only 3/10 behind Lewis Hamilton and 6/10 off pole position. Our Ferrari in the mix this year. But then it gets even crazier. AlphaTauri's Pierre Gasly, P5, only 8/10 off pole position, only 4/10 off Lewis Hamilton. Crazy scenes at the front of the grid this year. I generally believe we are going to see some incredible battles all year long. Again, need to try and calm myself down a little bit. It's only qualifying, but what a grid we have for setting up tomorrow's race. P6 and 7, the two McLarens. A little bit surprised I was at the pace of the McLarens today. We'll talk about that in a moment's time when we jump into our qualifying rundown. But Danny Rick on his debut out qualifying teammate Lando Norris. But I'm sure one thing that did put a smile on Lando's face today was out-qualifying former teammate Carlos Sainz, who had a really strong session, but an issue at the end of Q1 seemed to really put pay to any kind of real pace. Ended up 6/10 down on teammate Charles Leclerc, but making it into Q3, not bad on debut for Ferrari. Fernando Alonso, the return. So far, so good for the Alpine driver. He was P9 with Lance Stroll rounding out the top 10. The big surprise in Q2, debut for Sergio Perez at Red Bull out of qualifying before we even got to Q3. Red Bull tried to send him through on the medium tyres, something which I do think Sergio was capable of doing. The car definitely was quick enough to do, but just didn't hook that lap together. Maybe he's not quite used to the car just yet, and we did see that in all three practice sessions for Checo, but work to be done, but opportunities tomorrow starting on fresh tyres in P11. Behind him, the Alfa Romeo of Antonio Giovinazzi with teammate Raikkonen only 2 places behind. A great session for Alfa, but also a really good session for the man that split the two of them, Yuki Tsunoda, the Japanese rookie, putting on a stunning performance in Q1, but again, a little bit like Checo Perez, just a scruffy lap at the end of Q2, put paid to getting through to Q3. That little bit of an experience, though, I think really could have helped Yuki today because the AlphaTauri looks to be something special in the midfield this year. Mr. Saturday, as he is known, George Russell, again making it through to Q2, and though George did a mega lap, a spin for Nikita Mazepin caught out quite a few drivers at the end of Q1, which meant Esteban Ocon, Russell's teammate Nicholas Latifi, and perhaps the biggest surprise of all from the first qualifying session of the year, Sebastian Vettel, 18th place for Aston Martin. An awful start to his Aston career. It's not been a great winter testing period for Seb and Aston, but I suppose the positive is that things can't get much worse in the race tomorrow. And your final two positions were the two Haas boys, Schumacher 19th and Nikita Mazepin P20. And as we move over to our qualifying rundown, I will start with Haas because we thought it was going to be bad. We thought it was going to be tricky. Mick Schumacher, a solid job. His target was to beat his teammate. That's exactly what he did. Quite a gap away from getting into Q2, but we don't expect that Haas car to be anywhere near that, but still about half a second away from Latifi, cause for concern. But not a bad debut for Mick Schumacher. Nikita Mazepin, that was awful. That's got to be one of the worst qualifying performances I have ever seen in Formula 1, spinning twice on both his flying laps. We rarely see that once. Getting used to the car, I understand. Gotta do better over the next few weeks, especially in a season where that Haas car is going to find it so tricky to pick up points, and any little mistakes like that are going to have a huge impact over the course of a season. Our 9th best team today, Williams, I think extracted the most they really could. Like Haas, I think that car is going to find it so difficult to score points, but I think what is clear is that they are a step in front of Haas. Latifi 5/10 in front of Schumacher, Russell making it through to Q2, and yes, he was helped out by Mazepin's spin and the carnage that ensued afterwards, but there is some pace in that car, and when we get to venues where that car is actually built to perform, I've got a good feeling about Williams. So with Russell getting through to Q2, maybe if there's a few crashes, a few crunches ahead, a point or two, maybe on the cards. A bit of a reach, but maybe for Williams tomorrow. Alfa Romeo, a huge surprise today. And whilst they're still the 3rd worst team technically in terms of results, the car itself looks really good. The drivers seem really comfortable. It looks nice and smooth to drive. Not many lockups from either of them over the course of the weekend, except Raikkonen's little crash in FP2. But apart from that, it looks like a solid car. Definitely a big step forward in front of Williams and Haas, the two teams they were in a constant battle with last season. But that performance in Q2 today, comfortably in front of George Russell, in the mix for getting into Q3, and I think it's fair to say, Alfa Romeo, the most improved team heading into 2021. Mega job today. I think they will have to be brave on strategy. I think Vettel and Ocon will be looking to overtake the two of them, likewise with Tsunoda, that is in between them. But overall, from a team side of things, my biggest surprise of today's session. Aston Martin are next. The 7th worst result, with Stroll just making it through to Q3, ending the day in P10, Sebastian Vettel in 18th. And I really do feel for Seb, and I indicated this a little bit earlier on. There wasn't really a lot he could do, and I feel the exact same with Esteban Ocon. Yes, their laps weren't fantastic, but not only did they get caught up by Nikita Mazepin, but also Carlos Sainz broke down at the end of that Q1 session, caused a yellow flag in the middle sector, meaning both drivers had to back out of their laps at the end of Q1. So for Seb, for Esteban, their pace today is not representative of where they're going to be tomorrow. But Lance Stroll, not a bad job. The 2 targets for him today were, number 1, beat his teammate, something he doesn't do often enough. A slice of luck in there, but nonetheless, he got the job done. But more importantly, the more crucial thing for Aston this year, getting through to Q3. There's still a few little intricacies where they will be frustrated, and actually there are some big storylines when we talk about a few cars in a moment that really highlights that Aston are going to find it tricky this year to end up in best of the rest, but not a terrible day from the rebranded team. Alpine, very, very similar with Aston. Alonso, his return, awesome stuff. Making it through to Q3, I did not expect that today. And with Fernando in front of Stroll and Vettel, Ocon just a couple of places in front of Vettel, Aston are going to be their main championship rivals, I would say, in 2021. But I think their big question mark coming out of today is, where do they lie in the pecking order? It's got to be 6th or 7th, depending on where you put them with Aston Martin. And that really is going to be a cause for concern over the next few races. A solid day for McLaren means there's not really a lot to talk about, to be honest. Danny Rick on debut P6, beating Lando Norris. That's what he wanted to achieve. Lando will be a little bit frustrated, especially because all weekend long, it seemed Lando was the more comfortable of the two. But when push came to shove, less than half a tenth between the pair of them. So close, but that tiny little inch gave Danny Ric the edge. But what I am surprised to say is I think the focus for tomorrow will be to finish in these positions. I think the cars in front, maybe it was just qualifying pace, but Leclerc and Pierre Gasly looked so good today. So good today, especially Pierre Gasly. My God, what a performance. P5 in an AlphaTauri, first up, fantastic. Probably will be kicking himself he wasn't P4, was how good he was today in that car. But as good as P5 is, what is even more incredible about that man's performance today is that for tomorrow's Grand Prix, he's going to start on the medium tyres. He got through into Q3 on the mediums, and I think that's what cost Yuki Tsunoda. It was a scruffy lap, but I think when you're in your first weekend, let's keep things cool. We don't need any spicinesses early doors, but hey, Yuki Tsunoda is definitely a spicy character, which is what we love to see in Formula 1, and I think he's going to be a big story tomorrow, working his way through that field in that AlphaTauri car. But for Gasly, starting on those mediums, a podium could be on the cards, and maybe could be on the cards through merit. It might need a bit of a strategy variation, but it's possible. Great day for AlphaTauri. Ferrari, 4th place for Charles Leclerc, getting through on the softs into Q3, and I think will be vulnerable to Gasly early doors and throughout the race. But Ferrari are back. Ferrari in the mix this season is what we want to see. Will they be fighting for wins, podiums, week in, week out? Definitely not. But they're there or thereabouts. 1/10 off Valtteri Bottas for Leclerc, 2/10 off Hamilton. That is pure magic for the team that had a torrid 2020. And though Carlos Sainz was 8th, he did encounter a few reliability issues, so I'll let that one slide. And actually with those issues, finishing 8th, not a bad job at all on his Ferrari debut. Ferrari, another one, really surprising me in today's qualifying session. And then we've got your top two. And every time I look at it, I can't help but smile, because I generally believe we're going to have this fight all year long. And from day one of this channel, I've never really been able to report on a season where there's been a title fight, even past the halfway stage. So even though I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, it is just qualifying, it's looking good. And an incredible lap today. A hungry Max Verstappen is what we all want to see. It's what we got today. A Hamilton who is ready for a fight. A Bottas who was a little bit quiet today. But I think those mind games that we saw in Drive to Survive are going to have to come into play. And with Sergio Perez, yes, a disappointing day today, but knowing he's got a car capable of getting pole positions, winning races, I am so happy Formula 1 is back. But before we go, before I start to get even more carried away, let's take a look at your ones to watch and, more importantly, driver of the day. Plenty of candidates in today's session, but there was one driver in particular that has got me so excited after his performance today, and of course, it's Max Verstappen. Pole position, a 1:28.9. Not quite as quick as his fastest lap in testing, but still, mega job. Red Bull have the pace to challenge for the title, and a faultless Max Verstappen in the first qualifying day of the season gets my driver of the day. Shout out to Charles Leclerc, Pierre Gasly and Antonio Giovinazzi. But for me, Max Verstappen just that little bit more special in today's qualifying session. Let me know your driver of the day in the comment section down below. And your ones to watch for tomorrow's Grand Prix look a little bit like this. Of course, Sergio Perez had to be on the list. Starting on an alternate strategy, I'm going to assume, in tomorrow's race. Likewise, with Esteban Ocon, that didn't make it out of Q1. Yuki Tsunoda. That car looks quick. A fiery driver who's late on the brakes, who 1,000,000%, 1,000,000,000% is going to cause fireworks tomorrow. But your racing reviews, ones to watch, the first of the 2021 season, is Sebastian Vettel. 18th place in qualifying today. He is better than that. He has something to prove this year, and I think we're going to see it tomorrow. But there we have it. That is it from me here in Bahrain for the first qualifying session of the 2021 season. Tomorrow, racing returns. I'll be over with the F1 Word live straight after the race for some race reaction goodness, and after that you can catch my full race review here on the channel tomorrow evening. Enjoy the race, guys. I've got a funny feeling it's going to be a good one. If you are new, feel free to subscribe, like if you enjoyed, really helps out the channel, and I'll see you all in the next one.